Well, thank you for coming to speak about cases in cabinetry to the Cultural Center and Museum Consortium. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge. And so we'd just like to know a little bit about the basics on how you choose casework in cabinetry and kind of going through the process so anyone new to it understands a little bit more. So without further ado, if I call on you, just announce who you are, who you work for, and then maybe talk about a recent project that you have had to go through this process with. And then we'll do questions at the end. Thanks. Okay, Angie, do you want to start?
Sure. So my name is Angie Demma. I'm the Director of Collections and Exhibits at the Alaska Native Heritage Center. And we've had multiple different opportunities to purchase casework over the last 2 to 3 years. The first project was a small project for a pop-up exhibit. And so we were really looking for the smallest exhibits that were still secure and that could travel in a small plane. And so we looked at the usual suspects. So, University Products and Gaylord Brothers and some of the other archival supply stores. And really, those two were the main places that had things, small cases that you can pop up and that are easy to put together and will fit on a small plane. And they are not cheap. So, be ready for a price tag. And typically, I think the smallest ones were maybe 1,500 for a small, probably foot by foot case that's maybe 10 inches or a foot high as well. And then probably equally as much to get it here because of its size. And so just be ready to double the cost in Alaska at the most, at the maximum. Typically, it's a little under that from what my experience, but so that was the first project. And then we had a project, and I don't know if I can share my screen. Um, see if I can minimize this and then bring up. So, and then the next, I'm just going to pull up Gaylord Brothers. I don't know if you can see my screen yet.
Not yet.
Okay. See if I can't make it bigger. Oh, and maybe do I have to do something on my end?
You should have pushed share screen and then did it have the options?
I'm not seeing share screen on here.
Oh, does anyone else see share screen? Okay. It should be at the bottom in the middle. Is it green?
Bottom middle, I see more, maybe there. Share, there it is. It's under more. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I- Are you seeing anything yet?
No, not
No.
yet.
Okay, it's doing something else in the background. So I might just talk about it instead.
Okay.
Okay. So we bought what's called a Metro case from Gaylord Brothers for the next project. And so we got a grant from I believe it was actually it was West Staff, and it was a $40,000 grant. And it was our first time we were buying some cases to replace cases that were in our space. And really, I was trying to replace existing cases. And so I was looking for a freestanding case, and I wanted to see it from all the way around so that there were two sides to the case. And then also I wanted it to have a passive buffered system because at the time our humidifiers weren't working really well. And so that was a consideration we had. And so when we were trying to decide what kind of case we needed, and really Gaylord Brothers was the best money for the size case we were looking for in that case. And Metro case was the name of the case we decided on, and it's pretty good size, probably about 5 feet tall by, I'd say about 3 feet wide by, um, and then 4 feet in depth. Yeah, there you go. And it's a Metro Midtown. and they were about the same cost when we bought them 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, and I bought three of them. And actually, I got them up here for fairly inexpensive that time. And everything came out to about $40,000 for three of those cases. And you can, some of the considerations are adding some feet on it, which I found super helpful so that you can move them around too. Thinking about how you're going to use them, how you're going to move them around is super important, especially in an institution like ours where we don't have teams of people. It's maintenance staff helping us set up. So thinking about those kind of, who's putting it up, who's moving it, um, how are we repositioning it, and what are the conditions of our building for how we're making decisions about which cases we're going to buy. And then the next project we had was our major remodel. So we looked at, Gaylord Brothers, of course, and um, university. And then we went beyond that and looked at a lot of international companies as well, because this was a larger project, and started asking around the state. And one of the companies that came really top um, of my list when I started looking was Zone, out of Quebec. And so we looked at zone cases, and the reason why I went with the cases we did, so there was a few different cases that we decided on, and all of our idea is we're a small institution. We don't have an endowment. We don't have a maintenance staff. So thinking about what's flexible. We're not going to replace cases every time we have a new show. We're not able to do that kind of thing. And so making sure that these cases are modular. So these ones that we bought are standard off the wall, off the shelf cases that can be added together to make bigger cases. And so that was what we went with. And we bought 20 of those so that we can, and there's connector kits so that you can make them up to, I think, 3 cases wide, mannequin cases. Um, and really, those are the most flexible that I found. And they are also passive buffered systems so that, let's say your HVAC isn't great or you have problems keeping a certain humidity, you can charge desiccant compartments in the case and really set the humidity in that case. And they are airtight. Um, I would say the next cases we did were in our identity galleries, and we were trying to fill a certain amount of space, and we went with a custom case for those. Um, Now, I used a designer for we had a designer for our space, and I didn't realize until it was too late that they had ordered a custom color on the case. So you really want to pay attention if you're using a designer. Make sure if you're trying to have your flexible space be flexible into the future, that you are paying attention to some of those details, because right now I am stuck between a rock and a hard place because one of the cases came and it was broken and in shipping. And so now I have to get a new bonnet made, and it's a specialized color. And they didn't realize it when they were pulling the whole thing together. And now everything's delayed by about a month. And so I might not make my opening with that one case because of this kind of, you really do have to kind of think about the simple solution when you're a small team, and not using custom colors and thinking about those bases. The other thing I did want on those cases were really nice casters on the bottom so I could easily move them, because these long cases that we bought that were custom were 7 feet long. And that, if you know how heavy really thick plexiglass is, that is not something 2 people or even 4 people can carry. And so just thinking about those kind of things, I also had the wheels covered. And so, the aesthetics are a consideration, the environment, where they're standing, where they are. Um, and then we had a third kind of case that has room for documents as well in a drawer. And so thinking about the add-ons are also an important thought and what you're going to use those cases for. So we did 5 of the custom cases, and we have 5 identity galleries, so we do things in fives. And so, and 5 of the cases with pull-out drawers, thinking, we want to be fair between cultural groups as well. So, those were some of our considerations in designing the space and deciding what casework we were making. Um, and I think I'll stop there and let people ask questions as well. But I'll say for 30 cases from Zone, both the custom, of course, you're going to pay a premium. And so, especially when you have a custom color. Um, and that was close to, I think we spent over $300,000 for all of our casework in the total, and that was over 2 grants, if not 3. And so, just thinking about that cost, and then one thing I'll say while I'm thinking about it is also lighting. I didn't do any internal lighting, and actually, when I got my bids, I had the lighting in there, and I ended up cutting it because it would have added another $80,000 to my bid, because you have to have UHL listed lighting installation in that in the state. And so making sure you understand like the true cost of something as well is really helpful. So I'll stop there.
That was great. Thank you. I have some questions written down for later, but
Okay.
let's move on to Amanda. Are you ready?
Sure. So
Mm.
I didn't really prepare. I was just gonna kind of wing it.
Yeah, go for it.
So oh, gotta hide that self view there 1 second. Be very distracting. Okay. So the cabinetry that I was going to talk about is the cabinetry for our new collections vault. And so it's all new compacting storage because we were moving from one size space into a different size space. And so, our old vault on the ground floor had more vertical space, for example. And so we couldn't just put the old compacting storage in the basement because it wouldn't, pass fire code. So we had to get all new storage units. I did not have I was not part of the discussions when it came to which company we used. It was just the architect said we're using Delta Designs, so that's who we used. I suspect most companies kind of have the same kind of offerings. I don't know that they could possibly be that different. So I think it's probably just who you can build a good relationship with and who, what you can afford. So we used Delta Designs, and they just sent me schematics for the different kind of configurations that they had and told me to sort of tell them what I wanted. And so since we have some things that are, precious organics, like some of the Carlick materials that are, wooden objects from several hundred years ago, as well as like basketry and textiles, we wanted some that had doors. We frequently have problems with our HVAC units. And so even though we have a brand new system and I'm hopeful that it will be better in the future, we have had problems in the past. And so having cabinetry with doors was really important. It also just helps with, pests and any other kind of emergency things that happen. And so, but of course, doors are also much more expensive. And so I was able to get some cabinets with doors, but not all. We also selected some textile cabinets that were really long because we have some parkas that were very, very long that wouldn't fit on other shelving units. And so those are cabinets that have like the accordion doors. They're like really, really long. I lost all my overhead, like over all my compacting storage. Like I had been able to use space on top of the compacting storage in the old unit. It's where we like kept the kayaks and large pieces of art and things like that. Well, I don't have that overhead space anymore. And so some of the cabinetry we selected were wide span. So they would smush 2 cabinets together and like leave out the back. So we would have this extra wide, extra long space. But that doesn't help with kayaks. But I saw at the State Museum, they had this wonderful cantilever system. And so I put that in for our vault. It ended up having to come out of the budget just because things sort of supplies and everything got more expensive, but it's in there for later. And so we'll have this space to keep our kayaks and then, long pieces of baleen and things like that that can't easily go in those wide span cabinets. So a little bit about how I decided what kind of cabinetry, the configurations to choose. Like I said, it was an entirely unscientific method. I let's see how can I explain what I did? So I thought about collecting trends, and then I went in and looked at the different kinds of storage that we had, and I divided it into a couple different types. So we had open shelving, and in that I included the tops of the cabinets as well as the shelving inside the cabinets and countertop space, any kind of open storage, space that I was using in the old vault, I included in this calculation. And then I looked at the different kinds of drawers that we had. We had shallow drawers and deep drawers. The shallow drawers were 1.75 inches deep, and the deeper drawers were 3.5 inches deep. And then I thought about like what it was that we'd been needing, what would have been lacking, and what we would need going forward. So, the drawers are great for archaeological collections, especially, but archaeological collecting has slowed down. When the museum first started, a lot of archaeological collections came back from other repositories where they had been, in other parts of Alaska or on, in the lower 48. But as those collections have come back, and then I think a general trend in archaeology, or at least in our area, is going out and collecting, but not like being a little more selective and not just bringing in every single little flake that you see, but bringing in things that you actually want to keep and that are will tell a story. And so archaeological materials, we're not bringing in the volume that we had. And so I wanted to sort of prioritize open space, open shelving, because those are the things that we are needing more space for. So as things come back from other museums, as masks and parkas and other things come back, that was the kind of space that we really lacked. And then, of course, losing that overhead space was a big loss too. So I went in and I looked at I opened every single drawer, I looked at every single shelf, and I assessed each one and considered how full it was. So if it's 0%, 25, 50% full, 75% full, or 100% full. And then I just sort of compared numbers. I spent like a whole weekend doing math. It was terrible, but I came back and had this 7-page document for our architect about my thoughts and all this math that I had done, and basically found that we actually had good amounts of space. We just weren't using it right. So like a lot of our gray specimen cabinets were just, as we had collected things over the years, things had just gone where we had space for, but that didn't always make sense. And we didn't always have time to rearrange to make things make sense. So like we would have these wood samples that were taking up 3 or 4 drawers worth of space in the specimen cabinets. Well, if I just moved that to some open shelving space, then there's 4 drawers that I could use. So a lot of it was just figuring out how to rearrange as we moved. And so that's what I mean when I say it was very vibe based. I went in and just sort of figured out like, okay, what kind of space do we really need? And looked at the collecting trends. I looked at our collecting plan to see what other kinds of things that we still intended to bring back to the museum. There were like maybe 2 larger assemblages that still need to come back. So I made space for those. And then just really prioritized open shelving space for those ethnographic objects that are coming back. I also, Angie mentioned, keeping in mind the color scheme. That was one decision that I hadn't even considered that we'd have to make. And so they sent us the color swatches, and we immediately nixed like the gray and the brown because it's in the basement, it's in Kodiak. I just couldn't imagine it being so dark. And so we went with white, which, would be a little harder to keep clean, but it does look very nice and fresh and everything. And then I looked through the numbers. Since this has been part of a bigger project, I wasn't really involved with a lot of the budgeting for this, but I found some of the cost estimates, and it was around probably 600,000 for everything. But that, that is an entirely new room of collections, so of collection storage. So I don't really know what else to say. That's just kind of the process that we went about doing so far. I'm pretty happy with the storage. haven't had any major problems so far, but I like it, and it's very nice and clean and fresh and looks great. So
Awesome. Congratulations. It's always nice to have the brand new
yeah.
storage. It looks very impressive.
Mhm.
So thank you. And I wrote down a question that I'll ask you later.
Yeah.
And let's see, let's go with Monica. Are you ready?
Sure. I'm Monica Shah. I work at the Anchorage Museum, and I've been here for a while, and I've worked on a variety of projects, not just here, but also for some other organizations around the state. And so I thought I would talk about a couple different things. And it was really nice hearing Amanda and Angela speak about their projects, because it kind of made me think about some of the things that I thought about, and that, and each situation is different. And so one of the, or two of the projects that I was going to share, one is an exhibition project and another one is storage, is that it really depends on what you have to work with. And in both of those situations, we didn't have new space. We had an existing space that we were adding to. And I have had a lot of help over the years from other partners and other colleagues, not just outside, you all that I work with, but also especially the people who've worked here in Anchorage at the Anchorage Museum. So Darian Latoka, Julie Hoagland, Maria McWilliams, Janet, of course, who's here on the call, have all provided advice and helped me place orders. But I used Delta Designs, and that was because Linn introduced me to Delta Designs back in the day. And I have been working with them ever since. Up until this year, had the same rep. So over 20 years relationship with that company. And I really have appreciated the responsiveness and them listening to what I needed and helping me problem solve when we've encountered issues, and providing advice from their other clients. And so I really encourage you to pick their brains as well, because they have designed so much for other institutions. And of course, reach out to all of us for those kinds of things. But some of the things that I remember thinking about, and not even thinking that was a possibility, but that they had these oversized shelves designed that I asked them about, that they had put into compactor units for Angie. And so I just asked them, because I was looking for fixed shelving, open shelving, but also large to take parka boxes, because the cost of doing closed cabinetry and putting drawers in for large textiles, it could use up the whole budget. And so when I was looking at all the different kinds of cabinetry that was open to me, I made decisions financially, like what could I make the greatest impact from a preservation point of view, at the same time knowing that wanting to make sure things are accessible. So even though boxes are kind of a pain, and Janet knows, we end up having to have two people at all times, we're moving tables around and trying to bring out the parkas that I felt that not getting these really large cabinets with huge drawers that require a lot of space around them to open them was as useful. But I did get one small one, so I did compromise. And some of the other things I really thought about, we had a lot of shallow drawers that are kind of like what Amanda described. And instead, I ended up ordering for a different area, which was all the footwear that we rehoused, deeper 4-inch drawers, because then it helped with the slippers and boots. So we didn't need as much individual storage mounts by actually investing in having taller drawers that protected things from falling out. And I know it's really great to have individual storage mounts for each item, but I personally believe that that's a huge consumption of material. I, of course, love it when I'm in storage and I'm moving things quickly by myself with visitors, researchers, artists, descendants, whomever might be accessing, it is really great to have those trays, but I just, in the back of my mind, really think about the impact on the earth that all that material makes. I know we're doing a lot better job to do that, but anyway, so I really like the deeper drawers. And then we used to do kind of a partial shelf and drawer mix for most of our cabinetry, but looking back, I think I would recommend all drawers because of the types of items we have and wanting to share. And so I don't have to move as much that's in front of things that are behind, because it provides easier access and faster access. And we don't have a dedicated room, just to give you an idea, like I've been out to, I worked for the National Museum of American Indian, and that's, I go there often, National Museum of Natural History as well. And they have places where they bring the items for people to access. And that's just not feasible for the space we have. And so we were also working with spaces that already existed. And I don't recommend this generally, that if you can get standardized sizes, then the shelves and drawers are interchangeable, and that is great. And I highly recommend that if you can do that in your space and think about that. But our problem is we're living in the space that we're living in. And so I had a lot of different custom, and that's the thing to remember, is that all these cabinetries are made to order. They don't actually stock them. And so when you are buying them, they're still making them, even if it's a standard size. But at least the nice thing is that you don't have to send drawings back and forth and approve every little detail. So it can be a faster process, and getting a quote faster, as well as getting the product itself faster. And I agree with Angie about making sure you really pay attention to the details around lights and paint colors and all those things, because those are the details that might pass you by, and it's better to get standard, frankly, because then they can produce it again easily as well. So we went with white for pest reasons, because you can also see if there's pest frass falling, or if there's fragments of the item, the cultural belonging itself also falling. I'm trying to think of some of the other factors that I thought about, maybe things that didn't work as well as I thought. Some of the times you'll buy flat files that are oversized for oversized artwork, but you can also put, really thin textiles in there and things like that. So that might be a way, but I ended up buying from Delta Design a actual cabinet that's all in one. Weight issues are, so all this cabinetry weighs a lot. So that's something to really be in contact with your structural engineer, and or as Amanda did, with the architects that are planning the building, because they'll take that into account. So the weight can be tremendous. And so if you're not on ground, then you might have to stop buying this kind of Delta Design cabinetry and go with a lighter weight metal, which is also feasible. I'm also we bought metal shelving locally for some of our temporary moves, and I still like it for open shelving for boxes. So for our banker boxes, in archives and things like that. If you can find things locally and it works, it's good to get good quality powder coated, baked on enameled metal, because it'll help you in the long run regarding rusting, corrosion kind of aspects. But depending on your budget, I'm talking about the high end when you have the grants. And I don't know exactly how much I have spent over the years, because as I've had money, I've spent it to improve all of our storage cabinetry. And I would say, starting with Darian's first, $25,000 grant back in the day, to us buying, grants through the Muni, through the state, and then private funding that has funded a lot. A private foundation that has helped us with our storage. I probably easily 600,000 or 700,000 over the years, because there'd be 300,000 blocks. But when I look at it, individually, like some of the shelving is only like 5,000 and the shipping is 1,000 or 2,000, you know, between the truck and the boat. It's actually Delta Designs has been probably of all our suppliers, the best in shipping. Zone. So I was going to talk about the other exhibition side of our, some of our work. We do a lot of in-house building of casework and then ordering the vitrine, the plexi bonnet. We get our plexi bonnets from Twin Plastics in Seattle, a female-owned business, and they have really good quality plexi, and the glue seams are really nice. And so, you know, those are things that you could probably nurture and foster locally. But we found that when we bought the bonnets from this company that was set up, they lasted longer. The plexi, the acrylic didn't yellow as quickly. The seams didn't fall apart as quickly. And so we had those for a longer time period. And then we're able to reuse it. And we did go through a whole period where we made everything standard and then interchangeable to make them use again. But the big project, the Alaska exhibition project, which I was involved with designing and choosing the exhibition, not designing, excuse me, making decisions on design. I'm not a designer. You don't want me designing, but making decisions about casework there. Most of the casework there is by zone and it's custom. And that was working with that particular exhibition designer. And I love the quality of those cases, except for one thing is financially, there was a decision not by anybody possibly who had to use the operation of these and open these, but the hinges were taken out of the design in order to save money because those hinges, and Ellen has those hinges down at the State Museum. And so if you ever see those hinges, know how lovely they are. And so what that has resulted in is that we need 4 to 6 people to move a lot of the glass in that exhibition. There's only some of the cases that can be opened with 2 people, which means like Janet and I or myself and, you know, somebody else where we can do it without additional people. But all of the glass in there has to be moved with suction cups and by hand. The cases that are bonnets, those can be moved with, we have a lift that has suction cups and then can lift the bonnet and move it. But I really encourage people to hold out for cases that work for you and your staff size. And be realistic. If people say, oh, well, we're going to get you more staff, still try to get things so that you can have 1 or 2 people open a case. I mean, we should be working in pairs anyway, from a safety perspective, when you're lifting heavy things, but sometimes you just need things moved. And so it would be really nice if we could open most of our cases like on a hinge. Angie Linn also has really nice hinges on her glass cases. So that's actually where I saw them first. And then really advocated for them and thought they were in, and I wasn't aware that they got cut until after production. And so I wish that we had those, but we're working with Zone again to add some more cases there. And we decided to go with them again because of the consistency of design and everything. But in our changing galleries, we, like I said, we build our own cabinetry and then buy bonnets. And we try to make them versatile, but you know, that's not always the case. I'm trying to think, I'm sure Janet could pipe in if she wanted with a lot more information, but and I will say that I have probably bought every single different kind of case. We have the double accordion style door ones. We have just the single open ones. We have narrow ones, wide ones, squat ones. I love my 4x4 foot textile one, which has 4-inch or 6-inch deep drawers. I love it. It's great for people to see the smaller clothing textiles. It's not as efficient because it does have a lot of airspace because the textiles are thin, but the drawers are a little deep, but it does allow a really good visibility. And I got the extra extenders so that it fully pulls out. So but it requires that we have 4 feet in front of it, right? Because it's 4 feet and 4 feet. And with some of our other cabinetry, we have just an aisle that is 40 inches, for ADA. A wheelchair can get through. And that's the maximum. And so to think about when you might be working in a space versus when you might not be and how you use the space. I feel like I really understand how we use our space, and I've designed for that for the storage spaces. But if we went into a new space with a big rectangle, oh my gosh, so much fun. And I'd be calling all of you to help pick and choose the cabinetry. I guess I'll stop there.
Yeah, that was amazing. I think definitely hinges. It's a really good tip. Okay, Angie, Linn?
Great. Well, it's nice going later in the group because now I can customize what I've said to either reflect on what everybody has said before me and to ignore some of the things I was going to say. But I am going to, let's see. Oh, they've changed this layout. So I am going to do my browser first. Let's see. So can you see this browser here?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So we also at our institution we've gone through a lot of different growing pains on both exhibit cases as well as collections cases. So to start with exhibit cases, we when we did our Roseberry Gallery, the art gallery upstairs, we ended up going with a company called Caseworks. And so we're the non-zone people, though I was just drooling over some of the projects on their website this morning. You can see I've got the tab there. So Caseworks is a German company, and they have very similar products to Zone. And our designers, when we did the Roseberry Gallery, really like these guys, and so it's the same kind of thing. Lighting inside on some of them, they've got great hinges. They've got locks on the tops and bottoms in some spaces. And one of the things that our exhibits folk really like is these accessories that you can get. These case movers are spectacular, where you basically put this under each side of the case, jack it up a little bit, and then 2 people can move these massive cases. So what folks have talked about ahead of time, if you've got a short, a small staff, our exhibit staff of 2 can move everything in our whole building with these awesome little lifters, and they're flat. They have a little, it's this little lip right here goes under the edge. So if you're buying new and you're buying, from a particular company, you can see what sort of accessories they have to help make it easier for you. Same thing as far as pricing. Ours were, they work out, a lot of them are around $10,000 a piece. So it's definitely not cheap for those fancy gallery cases. Our exhibit staff told me about this company, Displays to Go, another sort of standard cabinetry company, sort of like Gaylord, where they've got set sizes and options. And so this one might be a little bit cheaper, but really small selection as far as the variety. So none of those sort of custom spaces, but lots of good options here as far as the look and overall design. So this might be a good option for folks too who have a limited budget and want to have kind of standardized modular types of cases like Angie talked about. Again, there's the Gaylord. So really good options with these guys as well. So lots of different styles available. I'm gonna stop sharing that one and kind of show you some of our images that I have loaded up here. So these are, I just wanted to kind of show you what those look like in our space. So our Roseberry Gallery. So here's those hinges that Monica talked about. This is a kind of standard case. There's those suction cups, a lock at the bottom. And so you have these special little keys that slip into the hole. You put your suction cups on, you open one side at a time, and you've got these hinges right up at the top. And so these actually have a clear glass top on them, which you have to be sure to clean or else you get dust bunnies up there. So think about that when you're picking out your exhibit cases. Do you have staff to be able to go along with your Swiffer on a regular basis and make sure those are clean? And so, like Monica said, you know, we can have 2 people can open these up. You get your suction cups on there, open it and swing it open, and you're good to go. The other thing about these glass cases you got to think about are your shelving. If you're going to do a case like this, what's the mechanism for having these glass shelves inside? This particular company uses these aluminum rails or stainless steel rails that come down, and then your shelf is suspended on a little bracket that goes front and back. They're not really easy to use, but they're you know, I think you can slide them up and down so they're infinitely movable as far as your vertical space. And so that's another thing to think about, is how you're going to actually use that space inside. This is a new case that we got. It has the lighting inside. It just has the bottom, what do you call that? The plinth at the bottom, and it's got a label ramp on the front. And then this is the same kind of thing. There is a single, there's the hole for the opening. So this whole side swings open and you access it that way. And then with the lighting, one thing I was thinking about as you guys were talking, if you do that internal lighting, you have to make sure that you're near an electrical outlet. So make sure when you're planning your layout, if you go with lighting inside, you definitely have to be strategic about where your power outlets are, and make sure you're working with your facilities folks who can make sure that those are the right size circuits, you know, where you're plugging in. You don't want to blow a breaker when you turn on all the lights all of a sudden. This one, again, has the single bottom with the label ramp, and then there's a single kind of backer board in there. And so this is a case that we're using that's sort of a changing case for all the collections, just sort of, you know, 2 or 3 months at a time, and then we pull stuff out. And so that backer board is thick enough that for this installation, our birds collection manager, he built these shelves drilled in from the backside, and then our designer did this vinyl piece across the back, and so it was a really nice layout. And Jack did the little angled bracket for the bird specimens to lay on down there. So that was a really nice way. And so Jonah, our exhibits guy, ended up getting a second backer board so that while this one is on exhibit, one of our other staff in one of the other departments, who's going to be the next one in, can have that same backer board that they can be working on to kind of do their practice and their layout. And so they can, you know, modify and put shelving or do whatever they want on the inside. Now there's just a single piece of art in this case. And so they peel the big giant sticker off and put whatever they want in there afterwards. So, and then up in the art gallery again, here's one of those same cases built into the wall. And so this was something that we, right down the hall from this, it's just an alcove that we could put glass across the front of too. So as you're thinking about growing, you know, and expanding over the years, when you're making these design decisions, you can kind of think about the phases that you might have. So as you get a grant, you do one area, you use it in a particular way, and then you know, you can expand and keep those standard colors and standard designs and all that to make it more efficient. So, and then there's one of these beautiful freestanding cases with the big hinges up there at the top, and these funky indoor, you know, interior spaces. So some of this is kind of a combination of standard cases with custom ones, things, design elements between them to tie them together. But again, all of these cases in this gallery are open in the same way, so it's really efficient to get in there. And then our beautiful single case that we bought for the salmon bone dress that we got through an art acquisition. fund. Thank you, Museums Alaska and Rasmussen Foundation. The exhibit case cost more than the dress. So this is a $10,000 exhibit case for a singularly beautiful item that is really spectacular. And it's sitting in this gallery that was assembled in 1980 that looks very different in comparison with the oak. These are literally oak doors and pieces of oak that were custom designed into exhibit cases in our gallery of Alaska. So as you're going through these growing pains, you think about visually kind of how these things are going to look with one another. And, you have things that are 40, 50 years different in terms of their materials and their overall design look. And if you're okay with that, it's part of the character of the institution. I'll kick over really quickly to talk about collection spaces. We, like Monica said, we went with Delta Designs. When I inherited the collection in 1996, we had spaces like this. So compact mobile storage that was installed in 1980, whole bottom floor of the museum, the floor panels, there's a gap underneath them. And so the floor, the transition from the aisle, your passing aisles into your compactor aisles is totally flat. You roll over these rails that are recessed. And so it's a really nice smooth transition through there. The floors have pressure sensitive plates in them to turn on the lights. So you can only have your lights on when you're in that aisle. Also lets you know if there's somebody in there. And so and these are powered aisles. And so that helps with the security then too. Nobody gets smushed in there. So those are cabinets, standard cabinets. One thing to think about if you go with cabinets, whether you want the single hinges like this, and these doors can actually lift totally off. I see Angie squinting, so I'll zoom in. These are there. It's a hinge that drops into this. So there's a pin from up here and it drops into this bottom section right here. So you can, with a single lift off, you open the door, swing it open and lift the whole door off. So it's kind of like a Jeep. You can, have that all the way open. And when our mammals folks, I know they often work that whole way. They'll take doors off and they move whole drawers at a time. So that's another thing to think about if you're getting new cabinetry or you're retrofitting, whether you want drawers that come totally out, or do you want drawers that have the holders on the side so that they can extend all the way out but stay there. I have had people, when we have classes come through or community members come through and you're pulling drawers open, you don't put your hand under the bottom of the front of the drawer and the whole drawer falls out because you've gone past the point of tipping. So just some things to think about how you use your space. It's really important. New cabinets and the new mobile storage. This was on existing floor, and so we had to have a little ramp that comes up. So this first section, there's a lift up, and then you go into the aisle and you're bumping over these rails as you go into the aisle. We went with a combo, same kind of thing, drawers with shelves for the oversized items, and then your more standardized things inside there. Our beautiful cabinets. So here's the other type of hinge that you can get. These are called the accordion hinges. Is that what it's called? Piano hinge, not the accordion. That makes more sense. So the entire length of the door is hinged, which gives you're not going to have slumping of those hinges if you've got a big tall cabinet like this. So instead of having two cabinets stacked on top of each other like we have in the other sections, this is a single cabinet, double doors open up with shelves all the way up. So that maximizes your space inside, but using those piano hinges then gives you a really lovely, opening with no sagging. And then the knuckle buster openers that have locks on them. If you get a whole bunch, make sure they're all keyed to the same. So you have one key. You can open all of the cabinets instead of having, a keychain that, with like 15 different keys on it to open up your cabinets. Powered or manual. These are powered. You push a button, they move on their own versus using the cranks. That's another thing to think about with your compact mobile storage unit. The color of your end caps. Yes, we knew we were going to get white, but we were like, oh, I don't know, what color should those end caps be? So again, something to think about in your space. terrible problems to have, right? Matching in with our old shelving. This is just, you know, the standard kind of steel coated metal shelving. And then these are particle board drawers or shelves. And that's, again, what we inherited from 1980. And so they're terrible, but as long as they're painted and you kind of encapsulate them with a acrylic paint, then they're usually okay. Same thing inside of our old cabinets. The drawers have a metal lip around them, but the particle board bottoms, you know, masonite, if you paint those with acrylic paint, that generally, and then let those air out and dry, then you're a little bit better off if you can't afford, if your budget won't afford the beautiful powder coated steel, or powder coated aluminum is even better because it's lighter weight, which is great if you're the only person and you're moving things around by yourself. One last thing before, two last things. So cantilever storage, this is our, what we call our long skinny thing aisle. This used to be shelving, flat shelving, and my predecessor retrofitted the little brackets, popped off, got rid of the shelves, and then put these little foam and then these little nubs of wood here at the end. And then now you've got cantilever storage for oversized long things. And you know, it's if you're okay, if those items are stable enough that they will take the weight, they're lightweight enough that they're not going to sag. This works pretty good for having those long skinny things. But you know, a lot of wasted space here, not so much, you know, with the snowshoes down here. So that's you can do a lot with creativity, moving things around. And then this is one of my favorite things that we did. As Monica was talking about with oversized shelving, we needed a space that was secure because our collections range is 10 different collecting departments all in the same room. We've got students, we've got classes coming through all the time. So we needed secure end space. So this is the end of a unit here. These doors are bifold doors. So there's your hinges and open here, unlock this one, unlock that one. These open up. And this is actually just oversized widespread shelving that they put doors on, which is super cool because then I can have these super heavy and, you know, oversized things that are big. You can literally like climb right in there and, you know, move these things around. This, you know, printing press thing weighs about 100 pounds. I've got cannonballs in there. I've got bear traps. So big things that each one of these is just a modular little shelf that goes on the wide span, you know, brackets. But being able to have those cabinet doors open up and provide that wide span space in there, that was, you know, that was the idea of the designer. That was actually, it was Space Saver, but it was using Delta Design products. So that was back when Delta Designs and Space Saver worked together. So I really like that option. It's really helped us out because, of course, when you're in a room like this, you need to have that space secured. One last thing then, if you're going to have this tall stuff, you got to have ways to get up to the top. So make sure you have a variety of ladder heights. These are called walking stairs. And so they're safe, you lock them down. But think about if you've got a lot of vertical space so that you can put big stuff on top, you got to think about how you're going to get it up there and how you're going to get it back down, depending on how many people you have. And make sure that those things can fit around in your building. This massive one is great for getting stuff up there, but there's certain aisles that, you know, you have to really jimmy it to get it to go into the aisle. So thinking about your swing space, thinking about when you're bringing these things into your building, walk that path from, you know, will they fit in your elevator if you're going to the basement? Will they fit around the corners? You know, so use your cardboard cutouts so that you can make sure that you don't pay $10,000 for a cabinet that you can't actually get to the place where it needs to be installed. I will stop sharing and do it with that. Thanks.
That was great. And honestly, you all answered my questions along the way. So you showed a picture of cantilever storage. I was wondering what that looks like and talked about the lighting inside. So yeah. Did anyone else have a question? I think we have time for one question.
I was going to ask, or I was going to actually add one thing, and that is to make sure you know what the size of your door is before you do your doors and your entry into your building. we actually have a very funky building and we've redone our loading dock. And there is actually a single door in the way after our loading dock. And so you have to know your dimensions for these large things that you're buying. So just an FYI, think about the door and what you have to get through to get these cabinets in, because they're not built in space unless it's the, compacted storage. A lot of times they do build those in your space, but the other things are being shipped in. So think about the biggest outside door you have. Sometimes the mullion will come off and you'll be able to do a span of a double door. But you really have to pay attention to that. We've had some issues there, so that was something that came up that I didn't hear. But otherwise, thank you.
I was going to say on Angie, I was thinking about that too with like, I think it was you mentioned about feet and Linn mentioned about having the accessory that went under that. But one of the things we encountered with ordering from Delta Designs is how to get it off the pallet. Because the forklift that we have like wasn't in the spot that the cabinet had to go to, because we have these narrow, we're adding, we're not like doing a complete big room that we're then just outfitting. We actually are adding to the spaces and what that might look like. Because a lot of these cabinets are about anywhere from 500 to 1,000 pounds each. And so it's not something that is easily movable. And so feet are really important to get them up.
That's great. Any last minute tips?
This is Mary from the State Museum, and I just wanted to offer a pro tip for anybody bringing in new cabinets. Don't do it on a day when your town of Juneau is having a pollen bloom, because you will end up hiring 3 contractors who will work for several days wet wiping your cabinets in a brand new space so that you don't have allergens next to your collections objects. Also, I just wanted to offer that Paul Gardinier found those hinges that are so extraordinary in South Africa, of all places. And he's the one, former exhibit person here, who found those hinges and turned zone onto them. We need them here at the State Museum because we open cases even in the gallery a lot to take things off display for ceremonial uses, so that the items can be checked out and used at ongoing ceremonies. And final tip is that many of the zone cases that we have in our galleries have a bottom lock and a top lock, and we use that for security purposes. So our exhibits team has one of the keys, collections has the second key, and to open those cases, we need a person from A team and a person from B team, just like Quantico. So it's actually awesome security. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and now I can go buy some cases with all my money that I don't have. Yeah, very expensive. I really appreciate it. I will send out the recording to everyone so everyone can learn from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having this and putting it together.